continue with inflation. We talked about demand push inflation. Now we're talking about cost push inflation. You know, like earlier we talked about the causes of inflation. We have demand pull, which means the aggregate demand within the economy is increasing. And if the aggregate demand within the economy is increasing, prices would rise based on the fact that firms would want to respond to that increasing demand. Now, on the supply side of the economy, which is for the firms or producers, they might as well increase the price of the products, not because the demand is increasing, but for the fact that the cost of production is increasing for them, so they have to increase the price too. They might not be able to carry on with the price. So if there is increasing cost of production, it means if they have to sell at the same price they used to sell, they will not be making profits. And every business has said because they want to make profit. So that means they have to transfer that high cost to become a high price for consumers. So that brings about cost push inflation. So I wrote, cost push inflation, this may occur as a result of changes in the supply side of the economy. When we're talking about supply side of the economy, we're talking about producers. The producers, supply side of the economy are for the producers. So this applies to the inflation as a result of high cost of production. So it's cost push. We are pushing the price, a high price. There's a high cost. Now we're pushing it to consumers to pay a higher price. That's cost push inflation. So what are the reasons why we could have cost push inflation? The first one is high wages and salaries. Wages are paid to employees. Wages are the reward for labor, right? Factors of production, we have labor, capital, enterprise, and land, labor, capital, and enterprise, sorry. So labor, the reward for labor is wages. So it means who would pay these wages? The employers. So if employers have to pay high wages to their employees, it means their cost of production will increase. And if this cost of production continues to increase for them, they won't be able to make profit. So for them to make profit, they have to increase the price. Get the point here, there's high wages and salaries. These are paid to employees. Employees, as soon as employees get high wages or salaries, the cost of production for firms would increase. And for them to be able to make up more profit, they have to increase the price. That brings about cost push inflation. Do you understand the first reason for cost push inflation here?
Yes.
Wages and salaries are increasing. Firms have to pay this. And if they have to pay, it means their cost of production is increasing. If the cost of production is increasing, they have to sell at a higher price to meet up that gap that is there. So that will bring about a high cost inflation or cost push inflation. The second one is increase in imports. Imports represents what we buy from foreign businesses. So if we are a firm or we are a business that needs raw materials from imported raw materials to produce our goods or services, if the demand for imported goods or raw materials increases, it means the firms that do the imports of those raw materials will have to respond by increasing the price. So the point is, this is a Libyan firm, it produces this, but it needs raw materials from maybe Turkey to produce this. So if the demand for raw materials from Turkey increases, firms that deals with those raw materials will increase their prices. So which means firms that need the raw materials will have to pay a higher price. So a higher price will be transferred to become a higher cost for those firms. As a result, they have to sell at a higher price too. So this is how it works. There are some firms that need imported raw materials. So if the demand for imported raw materials increase, it means the prices for imported raw materials will increase. So if the prices for imported raw materials increase, the cost of production would increase for firms that need those raw materials. As a result, they have to sell at a higher price, which brings about cost push inflation. The third one, firms might deliberately want to make profits. If they want to make profits, they might have to increase the profit margin. So if they have to increase the profit margin, they have to sell at a higher price to consumers. But most of the time, this happens because the demand for their product is price inelastic. And when I say price inelastic, it simply means whatever price they sell, we consumers will still want to buy. Do we get the point or not? The point here is firms might want to increase their profits. For them to be able to increase their profit, they might have to sell at a higher price. So selling at a higher price means we have to pay those prices. So paying it means firms will be able to make more profit. And that will lead to high cost. High cost too definitely is going to be cost push inflation. Firms think about making profits, but for them to make profit, if they cannot reduce their cost of production, they have to increase the price. Because there are only two ways to increase profit. Either to reduce your cost of production or to increase your price. But most of the time, if cost is not, we cannot increase that. If we cannot reduce the cost of production, we have to increase the price. Because the target or the objective is to make profit. And for us to make profit, we either increase the price or reduce the cost. So for profit margin to increase here, firms might increase their prices. So in the mind of consumers, we might think that they are increasing the price because the cost of their production is increasing, not knowing that they have another target, which is to increase their profit. Do you understand the top point here, please? And the last one, government, which is fiscal policy. Government might reduce subsidy or increase their taxes. If government cuts tax subsidies, it means cost of production for firms would increase. As a result, they have to push that high cost to become a high price to consumers. Or if government increases taxes, indirect taxes. What are indirect taxes? Taxes on expenditure. If government increases taxes on expenditures, it means whatever you have to buy as a firm, like equipment, machinery, factory buildings, or whatever you have to buy, the cost will increase. Then if the cost increases, you have to push those costs to consumers as a high price. So these are the reasons why we have cost push inflation. Do we get cost push inflation here? So for the graph, as soon as there is a high cost of production, the first thing that happens is the short-run aggregate supply. Firms will not have that incentive to produce more. So the supply curve will shift leftward. Get the point here? A high cost of production in the short run will reduce the quantity supplied in the market. So that's why we have the graph this way. The short-run aggregate supply curve will shift leftward from SRES1 to SRES2. So this represents a gap in the market. And this gap contraction in the market will bring about a higher price. I'm going to say it again. Increasing imports, government cutting subsidies, or government increasing indirect taxes will reduce the amount of quantity or the quantity supplied of goods and services within the economy, because a high cost of production will not be an incentive to produce more. No firm will want to produce when the cost is increasing, because if the cost is increasing, it means you won't be making more profit. So not making profit means you become demotivated to produce more. As a result of that, there's going to be contraction in the supply curve. So if there's contraction in the supply curve, prices will rise from P1 to P2, because the short-run aggregate supply curve has shifted leftward based on the fact that cost of production is increasing. So if cost of production is increasing for firms, they produce less. That less means the short-run aggregate supply curve will shift upward or leftward from SRES1 to SRES2. At this point in time, the price will increase to meet up with that contraction. So that's how we have a higher price. A higher price here is as a result of cost push inflation. Do we get cost push inflation here? Cost push inflation comes because the cost of production for firms are increasing. The cost of production for firms can increase if government reduces taxes, if government increases taxes, especially indirect taxes, or government cuts subsidies. You know what subsidies are? Financial help from government to reduce the cost of production for firms. But if government is taking that subsidy away, it means the amount of money firms have to pay in terms of producing the goods or services will rise. So they wouldn't have any other choice than to push it to consumers. But if they are unable to push it to consumers, the next thing they do is they reduce the quantity supplied in the market. As soon as they reduce the quantity supplied in the market, the goods become scarce in the market. And as soon as there's scarcity, what happens? Price increases. So if the goods are still available, then we have choices. But because the goods are not available, then the prices would rise. So cost push inflation makes the products to be not available in the market. Contraction. There's contraction here, and contraction will bring about a higher price. And a higher price is cost push inflation. Is it clear now, guys?